I was thinking about back in the early days of my cleaning business. So you guys know I'm old as dirt, and I've owned this cleaning business now for more than 3 decades, and that's where I'm going to leave it. So I've owned my residential cleaning business forever. And before I got it to $1 million, it was a lot of crisis, a lot of trials and tribulations, a lot of struggles, a lot of employee turnover, a lot of drama, tons of chaos, and really no freedom mentally and emotionally, and literally no time freedom before I got my business to $1 million. And before I fixed my broken business using systems to grow my business versus just sheer grit and pain and effort and hard work. And so I can remember now my business was doing well. I mean, we were bringing in a lot of money back in the early days, but it was still a chaotic mess. But I remember one of my vacations I was on, we went to Europe and we were going to be gone for like 10 days. And this was back before cell phones, guys. So I know some of you can't even imagine what those days were like. But back before cell phones, I would have to go find a payphone while I was in Europe and plan the timing so that, I'm sure it was like 6 hours later there. So I had to plan my timing so I could call into my office and check and see how they were doing, if there were any crises, any questions, any problems I needed to help solve. And so I would have to plan my trip. This was back when we used to go to Europe on vacation for several years. Back in the early days of my business, I went all through Europe. I mean, your business should be able to afford you the kind of lifestyle that you've always dreamed of, even if your business is still chaotic and and filled with drama and crisis. It should at least pay to make it worth it, right? And so my business financially was doing pretty good at different stages, and then it would do terrible and it would crash. But this was one of those times where my business was doing well. I had enough profit. We would take vacations to Europe. And so I would have to plan my time to go check in with my office, go find a payphone and call my office, and just see how things were doing. And I remember this very specifically. At the time, I had somebody who was really just kind of acting as an office manager. Back then, I couldn't afford an office manager. I was still a solo entrepreneur. I wasn't doing the cleaning, but I was a one-person show in terms of wearing all the hats. I was the bookkeeper. I was the salesperson. I was the ordering supply person. I would buy the supplies and fill the bottles. I mean, I was doing everything. So I had one of my employees come in and work in the office while I was on vacation during this period of time. And I checked in with her. I called from a payphone, and let me see if I can remember her name. For some reason, I think her name was Debbie. And I'm not joking. I think her name was Debbie. Um, I don't know why I think I remember that. I remember her face exactly, but I struggle to remember her name. But I think her name was Debbie, to be honest with you. But she was a very sweet lady, very tall, slim lady, and she was one of my best cleaners. She was my top A player, but I pulled her out of the field to man the office, handle the scheduling, handle the phone calls, take over my pager, right? So back then I had a pager for emergencies, and she handled that while I was on vacation. But I would have to check in every couple of days to see how things were going and answer questions. And I remember, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 days into my vacation, because I didn't have a lot of systems in place. I had very little structure in place. Almost everything I knew about the business was in my head. There were no systems and processes for her to follow. So, I basically dumped the stuff on her and said, will you answer phones, deal with problems, and handle my pager? And here's how you check the voicemail to handle urgent pages after hours. And after a few days, I checked in with her from a payphone and I said, how's it going, Debbie? And she said, oh my gosh, terrible. And she started gushing all the problems and all the stuff that was happening. And this one quit, and this one got mad and left early, and this one called in sick. And, this customer called up irate and angry, and this job never got confirmed. And so we showed up and they didn't know we were coming. And it was just all the stuff was kind of coming to a head after a few days, because my business didn't run on systems. My business ran on Debbie Sardone, right? It ran on Debbie. And so I was used to being an all-day firefighter, putting out fires, and, oh yeah, I forgot to do this. And, oh, my whole business was growing through sheer grit. It wasn't growing through systems. And so after a few days of taking over and basically sitting in the driver's seat, first of all, I think she never, ever wanted to sit in the driver's seat again. I don't think she ever wanted to take over for me again while I was on vacation, but I couldn't be reached while I was out of the country. It was impossible. Any other vacation, I just let people ruin my vacation because my pager would go off and I'd have to use somebody's phone and call, right? But I remember her response was, "Oh my gosh, terrible," when I said, "How's everything going?" And in that moment, my whole spirit and demeanor just dropped because here I am on vacation, but my business is falling apart back home in Texas. And it just about ruined the rest of my trip to hear her report. And I vowed that day that that will never happen again, that I will build the kind of business that can run without me so that I can take an uninterrupted vacation that isn't spoiled and isn't ruined by things falling apart and hitting the fan and dishes dropping and breaking because I'm not there to spin all those plates. Right. I made a decision that day which it nearly wrecked my vacation. It took me the rest of the day to shake it off. You know, that Taylor Swift song, Shake It Off. It took me the rest of the day to shake it off because it was so upset. This was my livelihood. This is what paid for my Europe vacation. And here my business is falling apart behind the scenes because I've chosen to take off for 10 days and unplug and not be there, not be available, and not be the one spinning all the plates and putting out all the fires and dealing with all the crisis and selling the jobs and answering the customer complaints and talking the employee off the bridge before they quit without notice. I wasn't there. And I didn't know how I would make this change, but I knew that before I took another vacation or before I took another time off for a week or 10 days where I wanted to be unplugged from my business, I would find a way. And so I know what it's like to go on vacation and it's being constantly interrupted. Back then, it wasn't interrupted by text because I didn't have cell phones, but I know what you're going through because it was my pager going off, right? And it was me trying to find a payphone or borrow somebody's phone. And so I determined that my business would run on systems so that it would not need me. And I set up over the next few years to build a company that did not need me. And that is what I did not have when I took that vacation. I did not have a company that didn't need me. I had a company that did not work the minute I stepped away from the driver's seat. And I did not want that. So first of all, I want to share with you a book that you can go get right now and read it over the long holiday weekend, or go get the audio version of this book. It is one of my favorite books, called Clockwork by Mike Malkowitz. And of course, he talks about your business running smoothly and running on systems and running like clockwork. And it's a very similar approach. It's actually almost an identical book to Good to Great, which is a book I read probably close to 20 years ago. I don't know if it's quite been that long, but close to it. The book Good to Great was what turned me around to putting the right people on the bus and building systems and having a great business, not a good business, right? A good business that pays the bills is not great if I can never take time off. A good business that gives me a paycheck is not great if the price I pay for the paycheck is I'm never home to spend the money, right? And so back then, the book I read was Good to Great. This is almost an identical copy, a little bit slightly modern day version, but he adds a twist to it. Clockwork, he adds a twist to it around how to take an uninterrupted vacation. And this is funny because this book didn't exist back then, but I knew when I got back that I had to create a business that didn't need me. And that was the only way I could ever take an uninterrupted vacation that isn't ruined by somebody quitting without notice, by my phone blowing up constantly, by me doing payroll or answering questions or calling customers back or closing sales while my family's at the beach, right? And so I knew I had to do something different. And so one of the things he teaches in the book Clockwork is how to take an uninterrupted 2-week vacation. And so let me give you some of the pointers. And these are some of the things that I did early on in my business before this book existed that made it possible for me to build a business that doesn't need me, right? And so now, years later, I actually have a business that does not need me. My business does $2.8 million in revenue as of today. We have over 50 plus employees, 750 plus recurring customers, right? So we easily service over 1,000 people a year, more than that. We did 84 first-time cleans in the month of April. 84 first-time cleans. We filled 400 inquiries a month for service, right? So we do a high volume, and I've built a business that doesn't need me. So don't think for a minute I can't show you how to do it if all you're trying to do is have a $500,000 business that doesn't need you. Don't think for a minute that I can't show you how. Mine does 2.8 million and it doesn't need me, right? So here's the first thing. First thing is you have to plan ahead. If you want to plan a vacation that's going to be completely uninterrupted, I want you to look ahead 12 months, right? So let's say your vacation is already going to be ruined because you're going to take some time off for the 4th of July, but you already know you have to answer calls, you have to put out fires, you have to talk people off the bridge, you have to do all this stuff while you're on vacation. Okay, fine. This one may be bust. But let's think about the next 12 months, or let's think about at Christmas time, or whatever you need to think about ahead. First and foremost, plan ahead. Put the vacation that you want to take 100% unplugged and 100% uninterrupted. Put that on your calendar right now. For most of you, that's a year from now, because you can't even imagine having a business that doesn't need you in 3 months. If you are in CBF, we show you how to build a business very quickly that doesn't need you the way your business has always needed you. But the first step is plan ahead, put that on the calendar. Maybe you want to take a family cruise to do a family reunion, which I did with my family one year. It's been years ago, but we took a family vacation and on a cruise ship and turned it into a family reunion. It was so much fun. So maybe you want to do that. And on cruise ships, you're very unplugged. You usually don't have a lot of cell phone coverage. Most of the time you don't have internet coverage, so you can't really work on a cruise. And so you plan ahead, and let's say you put this on the calendar for a year from today. I'm going to take the best 2-week uninterrupted vacation where I don't check in one time a year from today for 2 weeks. Put that on your calendar. That's step one. Step two, begin now to train your staff how to treat you when you are on vacation, how to treat you when you are on vacation. You train your staff now so that a year from now, it's nothing new. See, you can't start training your staff 2 weeks before your vacation to leave you alone, don't bother you, and let you have an uninterrupted vacation. You can't do that if your vacation is coming up in 2 weeks for the first time. So now is the time to train your staff not to need you when you're off. And so you begin the process of training your staff that when I'm off, you do not reach me. You do not contact me unless somebody is literally bleeding to death. And even if that's the case, don't call me, call 911, right? And so you begin the process of training your staff how to treat you when you're on vacation. And that starts now. All right. So how does that look? What does that look like? Well, first, so step one is to plan ahead and make a mental commitment. I will take a 1 week or a 2 week uninterrupted vacation next July 4th, 2023. Plan ahead, put it on your calendar. Step two, train your staff how to treat you. Now, what does that look like? First of all, in training your staff how to treat you, you must put systems in place that they follow. Because if everything your staff does comes from direction from you, then they will always need you, right? Now, they may be just in bad habits, right? Right now, you may have systems in place, but they just check in with you anyway, right? So you may already have systems in place, or you may have everything in your head and you have no systems in place. You have to wean your staff off of you first. So the first step is to make sure you have systems that they can follow. If you don't have those, you must go get those, and you have between now and your next vacation to get those in place. If you already have systems in place, you need to help break bad habits that you have fostered in your staff, of them constantly checking with you before they do anything. And this is that step where I say, wean your staff off of you. Wean your staff off of you. So let me give you an example. I had systems in place in my business for years before I became an absentee owner. For years, I had systems in place. And I also had fostered bad habits in my office staff and my field staff by answering questions. They already had a system to answer the question for them. So an example of this would be somebody would knock on my door that maybe worked in my office. They would knock on my door and they would say, I just have a quick question. And they would ask me a question that they already know the answer to. And then I would answer it. I would say, oh, yeah, I would do it this way. And they're like, okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to check. And then they would go do it. Well, I let that go on for years. Why? Because it's no big deal, right? It's no big deal. I don't know. Something in our ego makes us feel good when people ask our advice before people check in. People check in with us. It makes us feel important. It makes us feel needed. I don't know what's going on in our head that we don't say, well, what do you think? Right? We just answer because we know the answer, right? Well, I realized that when I wanted time off for a day or two, they would have to call me and ask me these stupid questions that they already know the answer to. So I kind of figured out that I have to wean them off of me. So I started small and I would say, well, what do you think? And they would tell me what they think I would say. And I would say, go with that. That's the right answer. And I would begin to do that. And then when I knew they knew the right answer and I didn't need to help them with the answer, and I felt confident that they knew the answer, if they came and asked me the answer just to be double sure or to double check, I would simply say, I don't know, figure it out. Because I knew they already had the answer. I would never again give them the answer to questions they already had the answer to. So that was my first step at weaning them off of me. Once I did that and I knew the ball wouldn't drop, the place wouldn't burn down, that we wouldn't lose customers and employees over it, then I would test it out by taking off on a Friday. And I would say, I can't be reached. I'm going to be going where I can't be reached. Back then it was like, I won't have my pager with me. I'm leaving it here in the office, right? So back then I would test it to where I would tell them ahead of time, I cannot be reached. And I would take off a Friday and I would see what burnt to the ground, right? You're not going to lose too much by being unplugged. And if there were all kinds of problems Monday when I came back to the office because I didn't have systems for this and I didn't have systems for that, then at least things didn't crash and burn too bad, but it would uncover weaknesses in my systems and processes that I would, okay, well, let's put a process in place so that next time if I'm off on a Friday and I can't be reached, you know exactly what to do. Right. So I would wean them off of me and then I would take a day off where I said, I cannot be reached. And they would either have to figure it out, they would have to default to the systems that we already had in place, or something would go wrong and they would tell me about it on Monday. And I would immediately say, okay, let's put a system in place to make sure this doesn't happen again if I can't be reached. Right. So you wean them off gradually. You don't just like take off for a week and say, sorry, I can't be reached, and let your whole business fall apart. Right. So I would wean them off gradually. Eventually, when I had all my systems in place where there really weren't crises, right? Things weren't falling apart. Things could wait till Monday that were no big deal. Then I would say, okay, I can be reached. I'm just, taking off for a long weekend. My husband and I are going to do a staycation. It was one of our favorite things. If we weren't going to travel, we would take like a 3-day vacation and go to Dallas and check into a swanky hotel and go to a fancy dinner and hang out by the pool and just have a staycation, right? We used to love to do that. In fact, we still love to do that. We'd get a babysitter for the weekend. And so then I would tell my staff, if it's an emergency, you can reach me, but only if it's an emergency, right? And because I had weaned them off before I would take off for a long period of time, I could take a 3-day vacation, maybe take off Friday and tell them only if it's an emergency, call me. And 9 times out of 10, I would have a completely uninterrupted vacation. And they would say, yeah, something horrible happened, but we knew it would be fine until Monday. And then I'd find out about it on Monday, right? So train your staff how to treat you when you're on vacation and start with 1 day. Don't start with 1 week, right? So plan ahead, train your staff Wean them off of you gradually. Don't rip the Band-Aid off and watch your business fall apart and watch your company lose your best employee or your best client, right? So wean them off and just do it gradually. And then do a trial day here and a trial day there. Eventually, what I did in my own company is I began to take off every single Friday, and I weaned my staff off of needing me to answer questions on Fridays while I was off. And I weaned my staff off of feeling like they need to reach me or page me, or years later when we had cell phones, text me. I weaned them off of all of those things. And I would take every Friday off, and eventually I had completely uninterrupted Fridays because everything could wait till Monday, right? And then eventually I took Fridays and Mondays off. Eventually I took Fridays and Mondays off. And guess what? It was rare that anybody would call me on a Friday or a Monday for something. It was almost never that they would call me for something stupid. And if they did call me for something stupid, I wouldn't say that what they did was stupid, but I would simply say, what do you think the answer is? Okay, you were right. Don't call me with stuff you already know the answer to. I would just have to remind them if little habits would creep back in, right? And then lastly, make sure you have one key person that becomes the go-to person in your office if you don't already have that person already in place, like an office manager. So let's say you are the office manager, and most of you are the office manager. Even if you have somebody you've called an office manager, that's not what they are, right? So I'm going to be doing a talk on ZenMade Summit on how to hire an office manager, right? So most of you are the office manager, even if you have somebody in your office that you call an office manager. So make sure there is somebody in the office that is the go-to person that can make decisions and solve problems so that you're not interrupted on vacation. And it could be your assistant office manager. It could be your key number 2 person. And you basically say, I need you to be the office manager next week while I'm on vacation. I need you to be the office manager next Friday and Monday while I'm taking a long holiday weekend. And you make that one person the go-to person so that anybody with a crisis, anybody with a problem that already normally would call you to solve for them will be told in advance, call her, call him, whoever it is, right? Who is that? And it needs to be somebody that knows your business well enough to be able to solve problems and answer questions and is able to keep calm and carry on and will not call you if they can solve it themselves. It needs to be somebody you can trust, that they will only call you if it absolutely positively has to be solved and fixed by you right now and nobody else. And so hand that responsibility off for a day or 2 days or a week to somebody. And I recommend that you hand it off for a day to somebody so that you can test them out. How did they do with that responsibility? Did they still call you with stupid questions? Did they solve problems poorly in your absence? Did it go to their head and they became a little bit of had a power trip with the other employees? So trial even that person out before you hand off your company to them for a whole week. And so test drive that person. And then lastly, teach your staff how to reach you after hours, if it's important, the best way to reach you, or how to reach you if you are away from your office. Teach your staff how to reach you. For example, Derek Christian, one of our master coaches at CBF, gave a talk at CBF Live in April. I thought it was a fantastic talk around how to treat the boss, right? And he called it the proper care and feeding of Derek, right? And he's trained his staff how to reach him. And he basically said, if it's unimportant, but you need an answer eventually, it's not like an urgent timeline. It could be anywhere from 1 to 3 days you want an answer on. He said, just email me. He said, it's not urgent, but you need an answer. Like, do you want me to order these supplies before next week, right? He said, if it's just a matter of you need an answer within a few days, he said, email me. That's a rule, period. He said, if it's important and you need an answer today, right? Not like within minutes, not like within the hour, but today, like before we all go home for the end of the day. He said, text me. That's a rule in his office. If you need an answer today, text me. If you need an answer within a few days, email me. Don't text me. Don't text me. Email me. And he said, but if you absolutely positively must reach me now, meaning I need to talk to you now, he said, call me. Now that's his rule. I'm not saying that should be your rule. I'm saying have a rule. Have a rule. And so what that means is you better not call me if you simply need an answer within a few days. So you don't get to change the way you must communicate with me. I'm telling you how you must communicate with me, right? And so he said, if my phone rings, it better be a question that must be answered now. Otherwise, why didn't you text me as long as if it was an answer that needed to be answered before the end of the day? Or why didn't you email me instead of texting me if you just need an answer within a few days? I thought that was brilliant. So teach your staff how to reach you if you're on vacation or out of town. Meaning, if my phone rings, somebody better be dying or dead, or the office better be on fire. And if that's the case, why didn't you call 911? Why did you call me? Right? I'll give you a funny story. I am so committed to having businesses that run without me. And all of my businesses run without me except for my consulting business, which it's the biggest business I have. It's the number one residential cleaning business consultant business in the world, consultancy in the world. I have the number one residential cleaning business academy in the world. So my consulting business does not run without me, but all my other businesses do. My speed cleaning business, I don't step in. I mean, I met one of our employees for the first time. He'd been working there for 2 weeks that got hired to work at speed cleaning the other day. I mean, my businesses do run without me. My residential cleaning business runs without me. I couldn't tell you the last names of 2 of the people that work in my office, let alone even the first name of half the cleaners that work for me. So, where was I going with that? Jeez. I had a story I was telling you about blah, blah. Let's see. Where somebody tell me, what was I going with that? Businesses that run without you, right? Oh yeah, I was starting to talk about if don't call me unless the building's on fire, right? So I'm so committed to businesses that run without me because honestly, I only want to do what I love doing. I don't want to spend my days doing the stuff I don't love anymore. And I no longer love managing myself, the individual cleaners. I have a COO that does that. He's growing the business, managing the cleaners, managing the admin staff. You know what? I don't want to do employee reviews anymore for my office staff. I have somebody else doing all the stuff that I don't want to do anymore. My nonprofit is another example of a business that I created that runs without me. Now, it's a nonprofit, so it's a business, but it benefits the public. It doesn't benefit me, right? My other businesses benefit me. But as a nonprofit, it's still a business. It's run 100% without me for years. Now, I do serve on the board of directors, so I'm kind of like a consultant for my nonprofit, right? I serve on the board of directors. I am a volunteer at my nonprofit, but I don't run the day-to-day activities. I don't run the day-to-day operations. But here's proof, even in my nonprofit, that it is a completely self-running organization, even before we merged with ISSA Charities. But I found out after the fact that our offices caught on fire at Cleaning for a Reason, and my staff had to vacate the office, grab all their equipment, take it home, and work from home. I found out hours after the incident and the crisis was over, after the fire department had been there, checked everything out, found out it was actually a fire in an office 2 doors down, but it created so much smoke damage and electrical fire damage potential that everyone had to vacate the entire building. But here's proof. I was not the first person they called when the office caught on fire. I was the last person to find out. And you know what? That first they thought I might be a little upset. I was like so happy. I said, no, this is the kind of business I want to be a part of, right? My nonprofit, I'm the last person they called regarding the fire, not the first person. The first person they called was the fire department, 911. The second person they called was the executive director who ran the operations. The third people they called were remote work staff to let them know, don't come in this week because, continue working at home. We're all moving out of our offices and moving into our homes. And then I was the last person to be informed. And I was so happy. I said, no, that's good. I'm not mad. I'm happy. I don't want to be the first person that you call when there's a plumbing leak. I don't want to be the first person you call when the office is on fire, right? I can tell you right now at my office, where we have over 50 employees and $2.8 million in revenue, I am the last person that would receive a phone call if the toilets overflowed, if the pipes burst and the office was flooded. I would be the last person that would be called, right? So when you set your business up to grow through systems instead of through grit, to scale with systems so that you have time freedom, to earn through systems so that you have predictable profit and high six-figure income. When your business grows the right way, it actually doesn't need you as it grows. It doesn't need more of you as it gets bigger. It doesn't need more of your time as you double or as you triple. And our CBF members have found that out to be true. We have CBF members that eventually became CBF coaches because their business runs without them. And their business doesn't need them every minute of the day for it to continue to grow or for it to make a profit or for it to not go backwards and begin to fall apart. Right? So that's what I do. That's my expertise, is I show people how to build a business where you can take an uninterrupted vacation. And when the time comes, you can take an uninterrupted life, which is what I've taken, right? I'm technically fully retired from my cleaning business. When I say technically, I guess really I have been fully retired for many, many years. I never go in and help cover the phones. I don't even cover for the CEO when he's on vacation for a week. He took a vacation to the Dominican Republic where he was unplugged from the office. I'm going to say probably 95% of the time. And our business runs so smoothly on systems. It's not perfect. I'm sure there were a few things that happened, but number one, I didn't hear about them. And number two, he was even able to take an uninterrupted vacation because our business runs on systems to where he could go to the Dominican Republic. I believe he checked in with the office 2 or 3 times, answered a few questions, and that was it. But was I bothered any of that time while he was on vacation? Not once. So guys, it is possible. I know people think you can't take an uninterrupted vacation when you own a residential cleaning business because it's so labor intense. It's so people focused, but it isn't true. Just don't try to learn from people who've never done it. Don't try to take advice from people with tiny businesses that, don't have a significant business that needs to be able to run without them. Take advice from people whose businesses are exactly where you wish yours was. And so if you want to learn more about cleaning business fundamentals, talk to one of our CBF members. A lot of them are actually on here today watching us live. Sky Carlton is on here. That woman has made such incredible progress since joining CBF. It's just, it's inspiring to hear the progress that she makes, that she posts on our Milestone Mondays. Amy Smith is another one who's made, after being in business over 30 years and doing all the cleaning for over 30 years and not being certain she could actually eventually put down the mop, did so successfully and has a team working for her. So talk to one of our CBF members and ask them if CBF is worth the money and will change your life and will 10x the investment you made if you just follow the plan. Ask one of our CBF members. And if you want to learn more about CBF, and some of you are like, what's CBF? Cleaning Business Fundamentals. Because here's the thing. I don't care how big your business is today. And CBF, oh my gosh, $43,000 a month. Oh my word, Amy, I didn't even realize where you are crushing it. you've really come a long way. So, cleaning business fundamentals. Here's what we say. You have to fix the fundamentals before you can make a lot of money and create a lot of time freedom. You can't have both. You cannot have both a big business and time freedom until you fix the fundamentals. So our first year is what we call the essentials program. I don't care if you're already at $500,000, or I don't care if you've been cleaning for 30 years like Amy had, right? If you don't fix the fundamentals, you will have neither or only one. And it's not worth it to have only one. Neither meaning I don't have money freedom and I don't have time freedom. I'm always broke and I'm always working. Or, okay, I have plenty of money coming in the door. I do make a good income, but I don't have a life. It's filled with drama and chaos and stress, and I'm working all the time. All right. So, okay, you have money, but you don't have freedom. That's not worth it. Or you do have freedom because you haven't allowed your business to take over your life, but you don't make that much money. Well, that's not worth it either. We show you how to have both time and money freedom so that you can live your life the way you always intended to as a business owner. You didn't quit your old job to become somebody else's hardworking slave, right? And you make yourself work harder than any old boss that you quit, right? So, oh, wow. Amy says when she joined, which hasn't been that many years ago. I remember, Amy, you told me you'd been cleaning for like 30 years. I thought, man, you've been in business longer than most anybody I work with. Her business was at $2,000 a month. Now she's at $43,000 a month. That's incredible. She has reached a milestone that 93% of all maid services never reach, doing over $500,000 a year. I'm so proud of you, Amy. And Amy says CBF for life. Yeah, we have a next level program. When you finish your first year, you don't have to go out on your own and start slipping backwards and following all these other non-experts, right, who call themselves gurus, but they've never built a big business, right? We have a year 2 and a year 3 program, an advanced program, because most people want to stay in and keep growing. And so I'm so proud of what you've done, Amy. Let's see here. Here's Sky says, we have tripled our income since joining CBF 6 months ago. 6 months ago. Guys, just private message these two women. They'll shoot straight with you, right? Nobody's paying them to say these things. It's just they're so happy about their own results. They don't want to see you continue to suffer. And these people are like, well, how much is it? You're not ready, right? You're not ready. You're driving around in a $30,000, $40,000 car, and you won't spend a few $1,000s to invest in yourself. You're not ready. Right. So let's see here. Just private message these ladies. Let's see. I'm in 10, but need more. I'm in 10, but need more. I must have missed something, sweetie. Elaine, tell me what you mean by that. All right. So Sky says, that is amazing. I'm proud of you, friend. And that's Sky bragging on Amy Smith, because I'm telling you, our members are so happy. They're constantly celebrating each other's wins instead of resenting each other's wins. They're constantly cheering each other on because they're happy about the progress they're making. Somebody else said it was worth every penny. That was Jeannie Coulon. Thank you, Jeannie. Such a kind endorsement, right? I don't know that I've ever, and I've helped hundreds of people. I've probably worked with more than 1,000 students over the last 15 years, but I've helped hundreds of people grow their business. And honestly, outside of 1 or 2 people who did nothing, okay, and I know who they are, I really can't think of a person who said what they learned wasn't worth what they paid. I honestly can't think of anybody who did that outside of people who didn't log in and watched one module and said, oh yeah, this isn't for me, right? No, they didn't learn squat. They didn't implement anything. I'm happy to give their money back. But thank you for saying that, Jeannie. She says it was worth every penny. And so guys, this is a long holiday weekend. This is your wake-up call to say, do I get to take uninterrupted time away from my business? Does my business stop growing when I step away? Does my business spin out of control and into chaos and not work and break when I take too much time away from it? Right? And if the answer is, yeah, it doesn't work when I'm not there, then it's probably time to start growing through systems. You deserve a business that that works for you instead of a business that you work for. So Elaine says, turning over 10,000, just sent friend request to everyone. Love learning and looking at your coaching. Thank you, Elaine. Are you a CBF member? Elaine, just remind me. I kind of get confused as to who's a member and who's thinking about being a member. So, but yeah, if you're already doing, a 5-figure month and you have not come through the CBF training, I can tell you right now, anybody that's doing more than 5,000 a month and you have not come through the CBF program, I guarantee you're leaving tens of thousands and probably hundreds of thousands of, Scottish. Got it. Great to see you. You're leaving tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table that you would have made if you just had a few more systems that I can show you how to implement. So thank you, Elaine, for answering that question. So let's see here. Who said this? Best systems in the world for cleaning business owners. My business tripled. Thank you. Oh, I guess that was, who was that also said that? Was that somebody else? Or was that Sky? No, I've got Sky's name on there. Oh, look, goodness gracious. Let's see here. But these are real examples. I don't pay people to say this. These are real people who have gotten real results in CBF. Now, do we have our members that pay for the program and do nothing? Yes, of course we do. But they will be the first to admit they did nothing, right? How many of us have joined a gym and then didn't show up and kept paying for the membership for a full year, right? But I've never blamed the gym when I didn't lose weight because I didn't show up, right? So yeah, of course we have those people that intended to follow through and didn't. But that's why we have our next year program that's significantly less than rebuying the program. So we have momentum for people to stay in momentum and to help hold them accountable and help them implement. It's significantly less for year 2 and on. So Amy says, I'm finishing up my invoicing for the day and headed out camping for the weekend in our 40-foot park model. Thanks to CBF. Have a great life. All right, Amy, promise me you will take a picture of that 40-foot hotel on wheels that you get to take anywhere you want. Take a picture of that and then post that in the Profits group and post a little something around the freedom and the financial ability to own such a thing and to take time off. I'm so proud of you, Amy. And so anyway, it was just so great to spend the rest of this afternoon with you guys before we all become unplugged and share with you how to take an uninterrupted vacation. Roxanne says, I'm just starting my business. I'm not sure I'm ready for the program, but I want to get there. So Roxanne, here's what I'm going to say to you. It's kind of like saying, I have the winning lottery ticket number, and I know I will be making millions of dollars when I cash it in, but I'm not ready to cash it in. So I'm going to struggle to survive financially for another 9 months before I cash it in, right? So here's what I'm going to say to you, Roxanne. If you're just starting your business, then you don't have to undo all the things you're doing wrong later if you start out with a system and you follow it. So you just have to ask yourself, am I willing to invest? It's kind of like saying, I'll go to college when I'm ready to go. I'm trying to be a doctor right now, right? If you're trying to be a doctor right now, go to college now because you can't, right? So that's my advice to anybody. Don't wait, number one, till it's too late. Don't wait till you have so many things in place. You have to undo a lot of things that you've already done and wasted a lot of time and a lot of money. Every year you're not earning a 6-figure income in the residential cleaning industry is a year you should have in this business. So my advice is don't wait. I got a phone call from Morris McRae, who started CBF. He joined CBF as a business startup. He didn't even have a company name, didn't have his first customer, and he was still a school teacher. He wanted to retire. He was fed up with the school system, wanted to retire and become an entrepreneur. And he said, I'm nervous about joining because, gosh, it's a lot of money. I mean, if you're not willing to spend $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 on your education, why are you bothering, right? You're just buying yourself a job, not a company. So he joined 6 months before the pandemic. So that should have put him out of business if he was on his own. But he joined 6 months before the pandemic. So he grew through the pandemic because he was in CBF and he had systems. Not only did he grow through the pandemic, but get this, 3 years later, I take a phone call, and this was on, what's today? Today is Friday. I took a phone call, I think this was yesterday, Thursday, from him. And he said, guess what? We just hit 94,600 a month. His business is over $1 million, starting from zero 3 years ago. And 2 of those years was growing in the midst of a pandemic and shutdowns and recovering from a pandemic. And now we're entering a recession. Do you really think you're going to still be standing? Right? So it doesn't make sense to do things backwards. You just drag out the pain and the suffering and the lack of success. So my advice to anybody, if you're at the starting phase or if you've already been around a long time, if your business isn't everything you want it to be, go find cleaningbusinessfundamentals.com and considering investing a few $1,000s in your brain before you waste thousands of dollars building a website, establishing marketing, hiring the wrong fit employees, and undercharging for jobs. You'll waste thousands of dollars more than you spend learning how to do it right from the get-go. Yes, Amy, he's a rock star. He's quite an inspiration, he and his wife. And he quit his job as a school teacher after being a teacher for, I don't know, maybe 20 years, within a year of launching his business. I want to say around 6 months, right around the pandemic. So anyway, guys, I'm going to sign off. It's almost 4 o'clock here, and I'm certain it's 5 o'clock somewhere. So I believe there is a cocktail with my name on it somewhere. So I hope you have a wonderful 4th of July. Remember the purpose, if you're in the U.S., remember the purpose of Independence Day, and that we have freedom to build businesses the size of our dreams. We live in the greatest country in the world. It's not flawless. It's not perfect. We have our mistakes like anybody else, but it's the greatest country in the world, which is why I wore my favorite t-shirt today, my red, white, and blue colors, enjoy capitalism. And that's what we do as entrepreneurs every single day. We enjoy the freedom to grow this business to the size of our dreams. All right, guys, I hope you have a wonderful 4th of July weekend. Don't work too hard. Enjoy time with family or just chill time. Or for some of you who are crazy and driven like me, because I'll be working this weekend, enjoy that quiet time to work on your business and not in your business. Take care. May the 4th be with you.